Welcome everybody to another with Father Biff. Today is May 5th, which is known as Cinco de Mayo in Mexico, a celebration particularly strong in the Pueblo region of Mexico, but also throughout the whole country. Not quite an Independence Day, but a day of memorial. As Mexico fought its civil war before America did, theirs was about freedom of religion. There was one group that wanted to establish a theocracy. It aligned with the Roman Catholic Church, and another group that wanted to have a liberal republic that was a separation of church and state. And it divided their country into a civil war roughly a decade and a half before the American Civil War. And so as that war erupted, obviously, it bankrupted the country. I mean, it absolutely destroyed their treasury. So what they did was enacted a 2-year suspension of all foreign debt. This did not make the European countries very happy. And so France and Spain and England sent fleets to Mexico to claim what they felt was rightfully owed to them. Now, one of those, particularly the French campaign, occurred and on May 5th, 1862, the French fleet landed and began to move on Puebla. And they met resistance from a significantly smaller Mexican force. Now, that force actually defeated the French by General Zaragoza, and that became the celebration of May 5th, to remember those soldiers who, many who perished, but who inevitably would defeat these larger French troops. Now, the French, unfortunately, eventually came back, and they ended up deposing the Mexican government for some years. You notice the year 1862, which means that we, the United States, were busy fighting our own civil war at this point. And also remember that many of the generals and older soldiers in the American Civil War also fought in the Mexican-American War. So there was a lot of bad blood still. And of course, Woodrow Wilson was not around, and international diplomacy was not yet fixated into the world. And so it took the Americans years before we started to intervene by providing military and financial assistance to the Mexican government to eventually expel the French troops under Napoleon III. So again, today's May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. It's a wonderful celebration. And so I thought, what a wonderful time for us to do Latino, particularly Mexican cooking, and to think about all those wonderful flavors that they use. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about salsas. Salsa literally is just sauce in Spanish in Mexico. So there's just an entire army of sauces with which people can play with. The first one that we're going to talk about is salsa rojo, or red sauce, known as salsa, basically. This is kind of what you get when you go to a Mexican restaurant. It also has a huge amount of variations. Much the same way if you're talking to somebody who's Japanese and you say teriyaki sauce to them, that doesn't mean one sauce. They have whole family recipes and series of recipes of their teriyakis. Kind of like the way we do barbecue in America. There's mustard-based, tomato-based, there's dry rub. So much the same way that we celebrate those different variations of the same thing, so is true in Mexico. So again, we're going to first start with salsa rojo, which is easily the most simple salsa that they make in Mexico. And the most simple variation you'll find is a tomato sauce. So if you want to be really industrious, you can go out and get tomatoes and de-seed them and clean them and run them through a food mill, or you can buy canned sauce. And considering all the flavor that we're going to add to it, a canned sauce is perfectly fine. Now, I will tell you, I purchased this at the grocery store. Pickings were really slim, and it's awful. It's a really bad tomato sauce. Unfortunately, we work with what we've got to during the apocalypse. So we're just going to start with a little bit of simple tomato sauce. That's 2 cups. And of course, that most wonderful, fragrant aromatic herb of Mexico, cilantro, that is used almost in every dish. We're literally going to add, for the 2 cups, 2 tablespoons of cilantro. We're going to add a squirt of fresh lime juice. And I'm not adding salt to this because it was already so salty from that canned flavor. But I am going to add literally a pinch of pepper, a teaspoon of fresh garlic. It's sticking to my fingers. And fresh minced jalapeno. Again, the jalapeno is going to depend on how spicy you like it. So I've got, a couple coming over to talk about wedding plans. I don't need to burn them out of the house. So I'm just going to simply add a teaspoon of fresh minced jalapeno. And just because I like, that would be it, by the way. That is literally salsa rojo, period, end of story. Now, I also like to add a little bit of green onion to mine. I just think it adds a little bit of that flavor to it. And because of the acidity, particularly in that canned tomato, I'm not adding any amount of vinegar to it whatsoever, just that little squirt of lime juice. And we'll just give this a quick stir. And that is it. That's salsa rojo. Now, in terms of variations to this, different peppers, different hot peppers can add different textures and flavors and spice. Some people like to go the sweet route. I'd recommend pineapple juice would be a nice variation of this, just to round out some sweetness. But that is really the most basic sauce in Mexico. In fact, to be honest with you, think of it as like a Mexican ketchup. I mean, this goes on eggs, it goes on steak, it goes on chicken. And so every family will always have a salsa rojo around, and again, depending on the family recipe. At the end, I'll use the other camera to focus in on the different sauces so you can see them in their textures and consistencies. The next sauce we're going to tackle is the salsa verde. Verde just means green in Spanish, so it's the green salsa. And this comes from tomatillo. Tomatillo is a tomato. Technically, let me rephrase that. It actually comes from the nightshade plant. Even though it looks a lot like a tomato, it's actually technically not a member of the tomato family. And what you'll see in the grocery store is that it comes wrapped in this husk. That's the natural husk of the tomatillo. So what you're going to do is unwrap it like a Christmas gift. And when you get to the center, it just looks like a little baby green tomato. Don't confuse these if you're at the grocery store with, you'll see frying green tomatoes or green tomatoes. They're actually not the same thing. They have a different taste, a different texture, a different consistency. When you've unwrapped your tomatillo, make sure you wash them really, really well. Not just because of infectious disease, but also because they have an incredible waxy buildup underneath that husk. It almost feels like rubber cement. So you'll want to make sure to get all of that off. Now, the way I like to make my salsa verde is I was already grilling today in preparation for the show. So what I do is, with that charcoal smoke, I'll put my tomatillos around the edge so they pick up the aromatics of the burning hickory and charcoal. And so I've already roasted those off. The salsa verde historically should be a really spicy salsa. This one should really pack a punch. Again, when I'm serving to guests, I tone it down as much as I can. My Mexican friends absolutely think this is blasphemy. But, so what we're going to do is we're simply going to take our tomatillos that have been roasted off. worry about the seams, but what I'm doing is I'm coring it essentially. They do have stems, and so I'm simply removing the stem. That's all. And I'm going into straight into a blender with this. And if people wonder why I don't wear nice shirts when I'm doing this, it's because you get squirted with tomato juice. These were 7 tomatillos that I sort of smoked, and varying sizes. You know, I'd love to tell you get X amount of large or small. I'm just super lucky and happy I was able to get them here in Somerset because, you know, in some towns you just can't find them. You always know if there's a Latino population around because you go to the grocery store and see a section with tomatillos. So I know some of our brothers and sisters in the community are Latino. So again, roughly 7 mixed sized tomatillos. To that, we are going to add 2 tablespoons jalapeno. Again, I mince it really fine. I would say, gosh, somewhere around 5 or 6 tablespoons of lime. I really want the acidity of that lime to pop. And yeah, I did cut fresh limes, but you know, I'll tell you, I love these instant little lime things. They're great. And of course, a heaping tablespoon of cilantro, 2 tablespoons garlic, to this I will add salt, a tablespoon of salt. I like a salty verde. We're going to add half a tablespoon black pepper. And this one's a little unusual. You want to use a vinegar as well. And in this case, I'm using a just simple white wine vinegar. And I would say 3 tablespoons. Should do you well. And what I'm going to use as well is a little bit of the white. I was already chopping a green onion. So I'm just going to use about a tablespoon and a half to 2 tablespoons of the white meat of the green onion. And we're going to put on our mixer. You don't have to worry about consistency with this. It'll just sort of work itself through. So I would use just a pulse to start with, just to break everything up. And then a puree. Always taste as you go. Really good. come out of the blender, they'll be really liquidy. Don't worry about that because you're going to refrigerate it. And as you refrigerate it, it'll start to thicken. And again, with all salsas, the more that they have time to marinate, the better off they are. Okay. The next tomato sauce we're going to do here is sometimes called salsa fresca, which means fresh salsa, or sometimes in America we call it pico de gallo, right? So what I've done here is simply seeded, diced plum tomatoes, 5 plum tomatoes, and just broken them down into a little bit smaller than a proper dice. Remember, a dice is an inch by an inch by an inch, right? It's a perfect cube, about an inch apart. A minced is a fine, but a fine dice is in between the two. So it's almost like a half inch by a half inch by a half inch. So I've got my tomato. I'm just going to go ahead and take some of that liquid out after it's been sitting out for a while. So we're going to add to the 5 tomato, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of fresh minced garlic, 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons fresh cilantro. You can never have too much fresh cilantro in a pico de gallo. That's just a fact. I am going to salt this. You know, you'll hear me talk about salting. I don't have anybody in the household with high blood pressure, but those are things to think about. So if somebody's got a heart condition or high blood pressure, always try to use either no sodium or low sodium products. But in this case, we don't have to worry about that. We're going to add about we'll say a teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of pepper. I'm not going to add jalapeno to this because I don't need the heat. That's not what this sauce is about. It's about freshness. We're going to add 2 tablespoons lime juice. Because there's no natural acidity to this outside of the fresh tomato, I'm going to add a tablespoon of red wine vinegar. That's red wine vinegar. And just to give it a little bit more color, I've got the green end of the green onion. So we're going to add 1, 2, I'd say 3 tablespoons of green onion. And I've got some yellow bell pepper laying around, so that goes in there really nicely. We're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tablespoons of minced bell pepper. That's it. Using fresh spoons because, again, I'm going to be serving other people. So thinking about contagion, you know, if I'm just making food for myself, I'm only going to infect myself. But if I'm making food for other people, everything's been disinfected. And I'm using fresh utensils every time if I'm serving anybody or providing food for anybody else. But we're just going to go ahead and give that a good stir. The nice thing about acidity too, lime, lemon juice, orange juice, acidity is great at killing bad stuff. If you're ever really in a pinch, you can't find any Clorox, you don't have any alcohol in the house, citrus juices like lime and lemon and orange actually aren't terrible at that job. That's what the ancients used a lot, was citrus to try to disinfect. So again, we're just going to go ahead and let those sit. But first I'm going to taste it because it looks really good. Love those flavors. The next one we're going to tackle is avocados. Avocados are really cool in so many ways. Now, they're really tasty. They've got a ton of fat. They're all fat. So avocados are great. You know, people talk about brain food and all these other things. That's fine. Just remember, it's got a ton of fat in it. So if you've got high blood pressure, if you've got some of those issues, just ask people, ask a dietitian, ask a doctor if they recommend that it's okay for you to eat. What's great about working with avocado is that it adds a base. You know, it's bulky, it's rich, it's fatty, and it can give you a really nice rounded out flavor. So I have, so I've already gone ahead and taken care of these. Obviously, the best way to do an avocado is you take your knife, you bisect it long ways, and then you just simply pull it apart, use a spoon to take the pit out, and then just use a spoon to run around the room, kind of like you're filleting a fish, and get the whole avocado half out. And of course, if you're going it ahead of time, they can suffer oxidation. They will turn funky, like a brown color. Just a little bit of lime or lemon juice will help prevent that from happening. So in terms of avocados and actual authentic Mexican cooking, if they make an avocado salsa, generally speaking, they're actually going to dice it. They'll dice it up, and then the world is your oyster. You can make it like a traditional tomato salsa, or you can take mango or fruits and mix it. Because it's a base, it goes well with acids. So any of the fruits that have a real nice high acidity will marry well with your avocado. In this case, we're just going to make a traditional, what we would call guacamole, right? It's just a traditional sauce. So we've got, in this case, these are 4 avocados that have been pitted. We're going to add to that 4 tablespoons. I'm using minced red onion because I like the flavor and I had it around. We're going to add a cup of water. We're going to add 1/8 of a cup of lime juice, which will just about finish this off. Again, that is acid meets the base, and they marry so well together. We're going to add 2 tablespoons fresh cilantro. And I like my guacamole really garlic. You know, I've been a bachelor for very long, so I don't mind the garlic. I'm going to add 2 heaping tablespoons of fresh garlic to this pot. And again, because it's a base and it doesn't have a lot of acid on its own, just to round out the flavors, I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt. We're going to add a tablespoon of pepper. And here comes your choice. Some people like jalapeno in their avocado. Some people do not. I will leave that up to you. In this case, I'm just going to add a teaspoon because I want all kinds of different flavors coming together. Finally, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'm going to add a little more onion. I have those green tops, so I'm going to add 3 tablespoons green onion top. Onion and garlic all the way. Go buy some breath mints, you'll be fine. And then comes obviously the obvious part, which is just you literally just mash it all together. You know, some people add mayonnaise to their guac. That's cool. You know, however you like to do it, float your boat. I don't like mixing stuff because mayonnaise is already a base. I don't really feel the need to add more to that. In case you don't know how to pick an avocado, particularly to make guacamole, when you go to the store, just feel the avocado itself. How does it feel? If you just depress it and immediately it's like a Nerf ball and you just go, not the best, particularly if you're going to end up dicing it with the fresh fruits. You actually want a little bit of resistance. So as you start to depress it, think about a medium rare steak. So you get just a little bit of resistance, but it's not hard. And if you get home and you find that it is hard, of course you just put it in the windowsill and it'll eventually start to ripen and it'll be easier to work with. That's good enough for now. Good enough for going. Always taste. Taste is good. All right, so that's, how did I miss one? I missed the sauce. Pico, tomatillo, salsa rojo, avocado. Okay, so I lied, we're doing 4 today. What I'm gonna do is switch cameras and we're gonna take a look at each of these up close so you can see them and see their textures, sort of what they look like.
Father?
Can you raise it? No, you're okay? Okay.
Now we can hear you, but while you were showing stuff, we couldn't.
Okay, it must be the camera. That's good to know. I'm gonna switch back though, just so everyone can see the other two. So we've got, those are the salsas, pretty easy stuff. Um, by the way, raise your hand if anybody can hear. We still volume? Okay, fantastic. So one of my favorite dishes is called Carne Asada, and it's a really simple dish in Mexico. And it actually incorporates flank steak, sometimes called skirt steak. These are what we call forced meats. Now, forced meat is any meat that is extremely tough and chewy and difficult to work with, but it's super cheap. You use it in things like London broil, the purpose being a long marinating process. Now, I had to do stuff ahead of time, so I couldn't show you, but at the end of the video, you'll see the ingredients for the carne asada meat. Now, once you get skirt steak, everybody's out. I've never seen this in my lifetime, but like you cannot go to Walmart or Giant Eagle or anywhere to get meat. I suspect a meat shortage is coming, so be prepared. That may be something that happens. All that we get was either ground beef or steak, or what I used was stewed beef. The reason being that I wanted to stay true to the roots of this dish. And again, you start with a long, slow marinating process. What I do is I'll take a Ziploc baggie and I'll combine the ingredients, which are jalapeno, lime juice, olive oil, orange juice, garlic, salt, pepper, and cilantro. And you just let the meat marinate in that over and over. And then I slowly grilled and smoked the stew beef. I have a pan that I use on the grill. And even though it's a super cheap cut of meat, it'll just melt in your mouth with all of this wonderful smoky flavor mixed with the acids, mixed with the garlic, with the cilantro. Really a full body aroma and flavor. And again, it'll just sort of pull apart and melt in your mouth. That's why you want to use a cheap cut of meat on this. The marinating process, for those who don't know, citrus will actually cook essentially proteins. If you've ever had a ceviche, which is raw seafood to begin with, perhaps shrimp or scallops, and then you slowly marinate that in various citric juices, and tomatoes and onion and so forth and garlic, and it'll actually cook the seafood. And what happens is the acid is coagulating the protein. It's literally breaking it down and cooking it. That's why you could use cheap meats, and they still come out wonderful and tender. In terms of Mexico, when they would serve this, it would be on a white corn tortilla. They would, give you a couple of cuts of that flank or strip steak on the tortilla, squirt of lime juice, maybe some caramelized or sauteed onion, a little salsa verde, really spicy, a sprig of cilantro, and out the door, and that's it. Now, there's all kinds of ways for you to fun that up. Get some Napa cabbage, make a little like coleslaw out of it. A spicy, tangy coleslaw, put it on the skirt steak with, maybe season the sour cream with some cumin and paprika and chili, to give it some rounding out flavors. It's meant to be a really simple, rustic dish. So that is carne asada. And then some people don't like beef. So I marinated chicken breasts in olive oil, cumin, chili, garlic, salt, pepper, jalapeno. Oh my gosh, what else is in there? A chipotle, and then again, just slow grill on the charcoals, and then I'll pull that meat off and serve it with, the beef as well if somebody wants chicken instead. But that's the basics of truly Mexican salsas and simple Mexican cooking. They put rojo on just about everything. It's great on eggs. I always love a salsa rojo on eggs for huevos rancheros. So I'll go ahead and unmute everybody. If you have any questions, please ask away or suggestions. I'm all ears. Any thoughts or suggestions, concerns?
When you say slow grill, what do you mean?
So if you imagine grilling, because we're going to do a whole episode on barbecue, but if you imagine a quick grill, you want a super intense low heat. So here's the charcoal. The grill will sit right on top of it. It's almost like you're searing it on and off, and then you're off the grill. A slow grill is you want to lift that off of the hot charcoals. You want a big, nice big bed of them, but you're going to lift it up, and then you're going to leave the lid off for a good bit. And it's just a very slow process of absorbing the smoke and the heat.
Which grocery store did you get your
I went to
tomatitos?
all three.
I'm sorry?
I had to go to all three to kind of piecemeal it together.
Tomalitos, where did you get that?
Tomatillos were at Walmart of all places. And I have to tell you, as much as I make fun of Walmart, so far they're the ones who haven't let me down. If I'm looking for something and I'm like, oh, I'll never find that here. You know where it is? It's at Stinkin' Walmart. Also, apparently, you can order stuff from them, kind of like Amazon, and they'll deliver it to the store. You can pick it up, or they'll deliver it to your home. I hate to sound like a Walmart commercial, but they're kind of selling me now with the fact they had a lot of really good avocados and tomatillos. Who would have thunk it? Now, I did get a chance today because it's not that time of year, but I grow my own hot peppers and I make my own hot sauce. And the easiest way to do that is literally just wait till your hot peppers are mature. You're going to put them in a pot with a vinegar. And I prefer white wine vinegar. And you literally just cook it down and cook it down and cook it down. And then at the very end, you add tomato paste. And then however you want to round it out. So like some pineapple juice or some mango or something. And then you just put all of that into the blender and puree it until it's essentially baby food. Now, if you really want to go over the top, you can use a fine mesh strainer and then slowly work it through the fine mesh strainer until you have a pure liquid hot sauce. But that's all that is salt, pepper, garlic, hot peppers, vinegar, and a little tomato paste. And then whatever you want to add to it to make it a little more full. Okay. Well, everybody have a great day. Be well. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Plate and where do I get my maps? I'll just drop off the plate and I'll just bring this in different. I already have it, so it's not like I